Having visited China on 12 occasions over the past 2 decades of bilateral diplomatic relations, he hails China's development as extraordinary and sees China as a true friend. Speaking out for small island developing states, he calls for concrete action to tackle climate change and commends China's initiatives for providing development opportunities to the world. Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, sat down for an exclusive interview with Leaders Talk. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Guan in Beijing. The Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, made an official visit to China in late March. He once described China as a reliable friend in difficult times. What made him say that? What are the deliverables from his meetings with Chinese leaders this time around? And having been in office for 20 years as Prime Minister of Dominica, how did he pull that off? Here's my conversation with Prime Minister Skerrit. Prime Minister Skerrit, welcome to China, or shall I say, welcome back to China. What do you think are the most important outcomes of this visit of you?
Well, thank you very much for hosting me on your program. And of course, it's always a pleasure to be in China. China is really a true friend to Dominica, and we have very good relations. I think the highlight of my engagement here is my meeting with President Xi, where we engaged on many important issues, both on a bilateral basis, but also importantly on multilateral issues, because like President Xi, we in Dominica, we promote multilateralism in addressing world issues and advancing world issues. And so engaging President Xi and of course the outcomes of those engagements were very successful.
What are those multilateral issues that you think you have built consensus on with the Chinese president?
Well, you have the issue of climate change. And the need for us to take stronger action where climate change is concerned. And so we are able to get the kind of support that we need from China in assisting us in building resilience against climatic events and putting our country in a better circumstance to withstand natural disasters. And I think some of the initiatives that President Xi has articulated are important initiatives which will advance global peace, advance global prosperity, and ensure that every country has the opportunity to prosper. Because if one country has all the resources and the rest of us do not have, then what about world do we have? And I think that the Chinese model of international cooperation is something that needs to be emulated by the rest of the developed countries in the world.
We're referring to President Xi's Global Development Initiative and Global Security Initiative, and most recently, Global Civilizations Initiative.
All of these initiatives, including the Belt and Road, those initiatives, I believe, are something which, in my mind, the United Nations should adopt. If we are to help nations like Dominica, help nations in the developing nations achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
President Xi, during the meeting with you, during the summit with you, said he believes China-Dominica relations are a model of South-South cooperation. Would you agree with him?
Certainly. We have had diplomatic relations for the last 20 years, but the reality is it seems more like 100 years because of the strength of the relationship, the mutual respect that we have for each other. China is a huge country compared to Dominica. But in my engagement with President Xi, he never caused me to feel that we were a small country. He engaged me as an equal. And I think that is the kind of attitude that world leaders ought to have, that we can treat each other with respect, notwithstanding our size, notwithstanding the extent of our resources, or the level of economic prosperity in our countries. And so our relationship is a sincere one. We stand very strongly on the One China principle. This is international law. And if we're to respect international law, we have to respect the One China principle. This is not an ideological view. This is a legal view that has been upheld by the United Nations and all international organizations. So it's not just China who is saying this, it is the world who is saying this, because it is part of international law. And so we will support and play our part in the peaceful reunification of the whole of China. China sees us as a friend. We see China as a friend, And as the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And China has been indeed a friend.
Yeah, you said China is a friend not only in good times, but also in tough times.
China is a friend all times, but certainly in difficult times. And we have always been able to rely on China's support without we even asking for the help. China has come forward to offer the help to us, and we're very grateful to the President Xi and the whole of the Chinese people.
A friend in need is a friend indeed, is the true portrayal of China-Dominica friendship. In the wee hours of September 19, 2017, Super Hurricane Maria swept through Dominica. Prime Minister of Dominica Roosevelt Skerrit posted on social media, "My roof is gone. I am at the complete mercy of the hurricane. House is flooding."
After Hurricane Maria, a Category 5, all but wiped the small island nation Dominica off the map.
As a small island state, Dominica has often suffered from natural disasters. In August 2015, Tropical Storm Erica hit Dominica, severely damaging the West Coast Road, the major artery connecting the capital, Roseau, with the second largest city, Portsmouth. Then came Hurricane Maria, further damaging the road. At a critical juncture, China undertook the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the West Coast Road. And despite the difficulties during the COVID-19 pandemic, China successfully handed it over to Dominica in 2020.
Because of its extraordinary commitment to small island developing states and its international responsibility, it is sharing with us the resources that it has. China doesn't owe us anything, my dear friends. We have friendship, but they don't owe us anything. They stand with us, and they continue to stand with us even today.
On climate change, we have two sets of data that are staggering. I want to confirm with you, Mr. Prime Minister, Tropical Storm Erica caused damages that is equivalent to some 90% of your country's GDP, and Hurricane Maria destroyed some 90% of buildings on the island of Dominica. How would you describe this urgency and impending perils of climate change?
Well, I mean, we face these challenges almost every month, these threats every month. And we're a small country, we have no opportunity to run to another state or to run to another province. It's just one island, and that's the situation in all of the islands in the Caribbean. And I think this is where we are more vulnerable than other countries because we're islands, we're small island states. And so it is a real existential threat to our survival. Every step you make forward, when a storm comes, it takes you 2 or 3 steps backwards. So in terms of our economic development or economic prosperity, we are not where we could have been because of the impacts of climate change, because you have to rebuild, and it's costing you resources to rebuild. So resources that you should be using to push ahead, you have to be using those resources to rebuild infrastructure which you put in place 3 months prior to the disaster impacting you. So for us, it's a real threat, and we cannot say more how urgent it is for concrete and practical action to be taken by the developed world to assist in nations like ours in combating the impacts of climate change.
A land full of natural resources and ingenuity, where millions are embracing a vibrant middle class, divided by politics, but united by hope. Latin America is changing rapidly. Witness the change on America's Now.
There is no more they, or you, or me. In today's economic landscape, there is only we. An interconnected world of business, trade, and investment. Daily coverage told simply, with insight and new perspectives. Global business. We've got the world covered.
President Xi made no secrets about his growing ambition for China, articulating his dual carbon goals for the country, also initiating this growing transition. How do you see opportunities and room for cooperation between our two countries in combating climate change?
We have the same vision and the same strategy. We are advancing the use of our geothermal resources. As a matter of fact, by 2026, we're hoping to be in a position to supply our nation with about 80% of our energy coming from renewable sources, from hydro and from geothermal, and the intention is to have 100% by 2030. And so we recognize the importance of that, moving away from the use of fossil fuels and the dependence on fossil fuel, and using the resources that we have, the renewable resources that we have, to generate energy for consumption by our citizens. And I think this, if other nations follow this, as has been articulated by President Xi and been advanced by the government of China, I believe that we can see a reduction on the emission of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
There are a number of concrete projects between our two countries, which are really manifestations of China-Dominican solidarity, if you will. Airports, roads, schools, and medical institutions. First of all, the road project. After Erica, I think it was West Coast Road in Dominica.
It's completed. They completed this road. We also have received the Dominican-China Friendship Hospital, which is a real symbol of the cooperation which exists between our countries. We're now constructing some 6 schools across the country. Some of the schools were affected by the hurricane, and we now rebuild them with China aid. Agriculture, we're making major strides in agriculture in terms of the use of technology in agriculture. We just completed a very important lab that will help in producing seedlings that could withstand pests and diseases and make them more resilient, and therefore increasing the yield and production of our farmers.
Talking about agriculture cooperation, you visited China Dominica Modern Agriculture Center, where you specifically checked out this hydroponic systems, which is a high-tech material for agriculture. How did you like that?
Well, certainly it's something that the government of Dominica has embraced because of the climate change. You have more pests and diseases affecting agriculture. It eliminates the issue of droughts or excessive rain, and I think it's the safest way to go about growing agriculture. You use less water because the water filtrates and gets back into use. Dominica is not only a country that is supplying itself with some agricultural produce, but many of the islands within the Caribbean depend on Dominica in terms of providing them with agricultural produce. So we have a huge contribution to make to regional food security, and we take it very seriously. And so we're advancing with the help of China to introduce more technology in the production of food in Dominica.
Talking about our public health cooperation, the first cardiology department was set up in none other than China Dominica Friendship Hospital, I believe. What have been the impacts on locals?
Huge impact. Huge impact. There are many cases which would have referred to other countries for interventions. With the advent of the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital, we have seen a reduction in that because of the services that we're providing, whether it's in eye care, whether it's in the treatment of kidney patients, whether it is surgeries. We have about 4 theaters performing surgeries. I mean, more than any of the OECS countries, Organization of Eastern Caribbean countries. I think Dominica has the most modern hospital you can find in the Caribbean now.
Mr. Prime Minister, you've been to China 12 times, as you just told me. What are your impressions of a changing China? Things that have not just impressed you here in the head, but touched you?
I think the development in China has been magical, if I were to use this word. It is just extraordinary. The fulfillment of a vision, the fulfillment of a strategy, the fulfillment of a plan, and the discipline of the Chinese people, the commitment to hard work, the diligence of the Chinese people is really exceptional. And I think the ability of President Xi and the government of China to get the Chinese people to understand and appreciate and accept the vision that he has articulated with the modernization of China with Chinese characteristics is something that is really manifesting itself to not only the benefit of China, but the benefit of all countries around the world, including Dominica.
Throughout this span of 20 years as Prime Minister, you've been coming to China. What are the biggest changes that you have observed?
I think, in technology. I mean, truth be told, I believe China is leading in technology, infrastructure, and not only just concrete, but the aesthetics of the cities, the cleanliness of the cities, the quality of your education, the quality of your training, the discipline of the people. And I think that the shared prosperity that has been articulated by President Xi is manifesting itself every single day in China.
Your relations with President Xi on a professional level go way back, right? As early as the 2010s, in 2013, we heard that during a very personal trip of yours, you cut short that trip to meet President Xi in the neighboring country of Trinidad and Tobago. How did that happen?
I felt it important and necessary that I cut my trip short to engage and to meet President Xi. And I think that was a very important engagement. It really helped President Xi to better appreciate the Caribbean region, to better appreciate the relationship between Dominica, and that has certainly helped in strengthening and deepening the relationship which now exists between our two countries.
Mr. Prime Minister, I want to get your sense on what do you think of President Xi as a leader and as the governor of the country of 1.4 billion people?
I think President Xi has been measured, he has been reasoned, he has been matured in his approach to dealing with global tensions. China, through President Xi, has been promoting more dialogue, more diplomatic engagements to resolving issues. The issues of sanctions is not something that should be promoted.
The region knew a fair share of sanctions throughout history. If you look at the brother country of Cuba, who had been the sanction for 60 years?
Which is unfair, is unjust, that one country can unilaterally impose sanctions on a country like this. And this has caused tremendous hardship to the Cuban people.
Mr. Prime Minister, you're here to attend the Boao Forum for Asia 2024. The theme of this year is Asia and the World, Common Challenges, Shared Responsibilities. How do you expect this forum to deliver for global growth and perhaps solidarity too?
Dialogue is important. It's important for us to examine the issues because it's an evolving world. The issues we confront change almost every single day. So it's important for us to have those kinds of dialogue as world leaders, as community leaders, as local government people, and of course ordinary citizens, on how do we define the global challenges we're currently confronting, and what can we do together to resolving those challenges. Because the reality is the issues which affect China affects the Caribbean and Dominica, affects the United States, affects the Middle East, affects the Pacific. It's the same issues. The issue of inflation caused by global shortages, the issue of security. Everybody faces those challenges. The issue of the advent of AI and how do we, recognize the importance of artificial intelligence, but also the downsides of it. And of course, for countries like Dominica and the Caribbean, the issue of climate change is a major preoccupation for all of us. It is really an existential threat to the global community. And people thought that climate change was only affecting small islands. But now, so it's affecting every single country. And I think there's a greater sense of urgency on addressing the issue. What we want to see where climate change is concerned is that we can turn those commitments into practical interventions. And I think on China's side, China has not only been talking the talk, but China has been walking the walk as well, in terms of providing nations like ours in the Caribbean, in Africa, in the Pacific with some of the resources we need to build that resilience against the impacts of climate change.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
with the latest market-moving headlines from around the world.
Welcome to the World Today on CGTN.
On the philosophical level, Mr. Prime Minister, China's role in Latin America and the Caribbean region has been much discussed and debated over the years. How would you summarize the Chinese approach versus stakeholders in the past?
The Chinese approach, I mean, there's a misconception, especially by the United States and some European countries, who believe that the Chinese engage us on issues relating to America or Europe. I met President Xi and we never mentioned America once. We spoke about Dominica, we spoke about the world, we spoke about climate change, we spoke about peace. And so when China meets with us in Caribbean and Latin America, it's about economic development, it's about social advancement, it's about how can we assist you in achieving economic independence, how can we assist you in achieving the preservation of your sovereignty. Providing both grant aid and also concessionary loans to us with no strings attached. The Chinese don't give us a loan and say to us, you have to do A, B, and C. No. They give us a loan with no conditions. So it is really about genuinely helping us in the Caribbean and Latin America in maintaining our integrity, achieving our economic independence, and preserving our sovereignty. There are countries who will talk and who will make commitments. But if you go to Latin America, if you go to the Caribbean, the largest source of funding for developmental projects come from China at the lowest interest rate. In some cases, zero interest. There no other country provides that in terms of the developed world. None. And I can say to you, without any fear of contradiction, and this is not an ideological view about the East against the West. It's about stating the facts.
Talking about cooperation, there's one more piece of it. That is recently signed a memorandum of understanding under your witness and the witness of President Xi between my organization, China Media Group, and a state television of Dominica. How do you expect that to deliver for both sides in terms of increasing mutual understanding?
I believe that it is a huge and significant MOU which was signed, and we look forward to its actualization so that we can have your colleagues in Dominica and your counterparts in China engaging in training. I mean, someone like you with vast experience, I think our news people would certainly benefit from your many years of professional broadcasting.
Dominica is a very important country in East Caribbean. It has the second largest hot spring in the world. Some people know about the country. Some people may not necessarily know a whole lot about Dominica. How would you introduce your country to our viewers?
Well, it's a pristine nature paradise. We promote more ecotourism, development that takes place around the environment. And I think someone who is looking to escape from the hustle and the bustle of life and the stresses of life, Dominica is the ideal place to come. It is safe. It is the safest island in the Caribbean. It is peaceful. It is politically stable. It respects the rule of law and private citizens' rights. And I think and the Chinese people would certainly have a wonderful time in Dominica, enjoying nature, immersing themselves in nature, and really enjoying what nature has to offer. Very few countries in the world you will still have where nature is at the center of its development, and Dominica is one such country.
Prime Minister Skerrit, thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not hard to tell that the converging interests between China and Dominica are expanding. They're expanding in commerce, in trade, in infrastructure, public health, climate, and believe it or not, in the Prime Minister's appreciation of quotes from the Chinese sage Confucius, whereby Confucius said, "A man becomes his own person at 30, suffers no perplexities at 40, and knows his destiny at 50. Thank you for watching this episode of Leaders Talk. I'm Wang in Beijing. I'll see you again next time.